Hello, I'm UNC Chancellor Emeritus James Measer, and I want to welcome you to a new interview series we're producing. It's called Good to Great at Carolina, and it features faculty leaders who have led their schools and institutes on journeys to excellence. Through these conversations, we hope to pass leadership lessons on to the next generation of faculty at Carolina. No one represents our Good to Great theme better than my guest today, Dr. Robert Blouin. As Dean of the Eshelman School of Pharmacy at UNC, Bob Blouin has overseen a great transformation since 2003. Bob, thanks very much for joining us. The reason you're here today is that when you came in 2003, as I recall, the pharmacy school was ranked 24th in the United States in terms of NIH funding. Today it's number 2. That's an enormous area of growth, and you've also overseen a tremendous transformation of the teaching mission and philosophy of the pharmacy school. So I have several questions in this conversation today, but the first one is, obviously you didn't do this by yourself. You had great partners, strategic partners. Who were they, and how did you choose them, and why were they important?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here today, Chancellor. It's a real pleasure to join you in this conversation. Being a public university and a public university school of pharmacy, we do have many natural partners. Of course, the ultimate partner for us is the citizen of North Carolina. And much of what we choose to do here has to be consistent with fulfilling the mission of the state. And so we look very carefully across this university as it relates to our research, our teaching, our service, and even our entrepreneurial mission. More and more is expected of a public university by the citizenry of its state. So when I first came here, one of the first things that I did is I walked around this campus, and I had a chance to walk by some of the finest academic programs in the country, perhaps in the world. And I just thought to myself, how could we, as a school of pharmacy, as a contemporary school of pharmacy, trying to serve the needs of the citizens of this state, the citizens of this nation, and perhaps in doing so have an impact across the globe. And so we began to align strategic alliances or partnerships that made sense for us, not just to partner for the sake of partnering, but to partner where there would be strategic advantage. The nice thing about a school of pharmacy is that there are many opportunities for points of connection. We involve everything from discovering a new small molecule that potentially could evolve to becoming a drug, to developing or creating new science that will enable us to deliver that new drug into a specific patient, perhaps a cancer patient, who needs to have that drug delivered preferentially just to that target site. And then we try to evaluate the effectiveness of that drug and ultimately incorporate that medication into the life of a patient, and then to the benefit of society to assess whether or not all of that made a difference, both in terms of quality of life or quality of life in relationship to cost of care. So we have a very broad component to our mission. And so as we were looking at partners, we wanted to make sure that we were looking at them in a very strategic fashion. What could we add to their science? What could they in turn add to ours? And the nice thing about this, as I quickly discovered walking across this campus, is what a wonderful collaborative culture this campus is.
Yeah, you came to a great place, so you had the potential. So who are these partners?
So the partners, we started first of all with the School of Medicine, because a lot of the things that we do within a School of Pharmacy have natural connections. And then within the School of Medicine, there are several collaborative research centers that were very natural for us. And certainly the two that were very strategic for us was the Lineberger Comprehensive Cancer Center and the Center for Genomics. And so these two centers had very natural connections to us, and I met with their directors, and it didn't take us long to begin to understand what we could do together. Other partners evolved, of course. It's hard to think about the creation of a new drug than to not consider the chemistry of that drug. And so we had a natural partner in the Department of Chemistry, also in biological sciences. We then learned that a lot of our outcomes and assessment metrics, could be enhanced or enriched by having a collaboration with the School of Public Health.
And of course, every one of these units you've mentioned are towers of excellence at this university. So the first thing you're saying really is that you couldn't have done this just anywhere. I mean, this pharmacy school happens to be co-located in a great university where you've got these other fabulous resources to partner with.
Well, that's exactly right. And early on, I would have to say that we benefited from the halo effect. We benefited from the fact that we were partnering to some extent with programs that were stronger than we were. But in many respects, our promise to our partnership was our constant pursuit of excellence.
Right.
And we were going to do this through numerous strategies that would perhaps bring new talent to this campus that not only would add value to our academic units or to our school, but would add value to their programs as well, that we wanted our growth to be not only a growth for the School of Pharmacy, but a growth of enrichment for our partners and for this university.
Now, obviously, the halo effect only goes so far. You have to bring something, ultimately something to the table. So what I want to go to right directly to the strategic planning that you began inside the school to create something that would actually bring value to this, to a partnership that you would have with one of these other areas of strength.
Yeah. Well, as you know, James, strategic planning is not one of faculty's favorite exercises. And so whenever you start talking about strategic planning in front of our faculty, they obviously begin to think somewhat cynically about the process, because in many organizations, strategic plans often sit in the bottom of
unfortunately,
some
in most
filing
cases.
cabinet. But what we decided to do was have a strategic plan that would be a living, breathing document. And it would not only reflect the vision and the ambition of the administration, but it would incorporate the shared vision of the entire organization. And so the most important thing that I believe that I did throughout the strategic planning process was to make this a faculty-engaged process, and also to make it clear to the faculty that there was something at stake here. And what was at stake was the flow of resources into programs. So everyone, wants to have their area enriched. Everyone would like to be able to recruit more faculty to add value to their organization. Everyone would like to have an opportunity, a better opportunity to reach their full potential as a faculty person, as well as the academic unit that they are a part of. And you cannot do that without resources. So by linking resources to the strategic plan and making sure that every faculty person had an opportunity to articulate their part of the vision of the organization, then we come to a vetting process that included both faculty and administration, because we didn't want just a plan. We wanted a strategic plan that was doable within a reasonable amount of time. And so if it was a good idea but it was not strategic, it would not prevail. If it was a good idea and was strategic, but it was strategic 25 years from now, right, then it was not relevant. The best opportunity for syncing great ideas with great opportunities was through the meshing of these and having some sense of how we as a school could make our greatest impact, not only for ourselves, but for this university and for the state.
Now, you're describing what sounds like, I think, even to the casual listener, a pretty fundamental transformation in the school itself. And whenever anybody who tries to create this degree of change and this is a relatively short period of time we're talking about, 2003 to the present, 2011, and most of this took place really, I think, if I'm not incorrect in saying, in about the 5-year period from after 2003. So this is where the greatest amount of this change took place. There has to have been some resistance. I can't imagine this all went over just, it didn't happen easily, I suspect. What was the nature of the resistance and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, well, I think that change for most of us is difficult. When you really, since I can say that I'm proud to be not only the dean of this school, but I'm also a member of the faculty. And I've been a faculty member for many years. And so I understand how I think faculty think about change. And quite frankly, I think faculty are all for change as long as it's someone else's change.
There's an old T-shirt I remember that said, "Change is great. You go first."
Yes, exactly. And I think that is the sense of most faculty. They figure they have it pretty well right, and that others need to adapt. But and I was reminded, from Jim Collins's book, Good to Great, that the whole notion of good to great is not easy. I happened to be in a meeting with a guest, and she happened to notice Jim Collins's book on my bookshelf, and she said, "Oh, Dean Blouin, did you read that book?" I said, "Well, of course." And she asked me, she says, "Well, what did you like most about this book?" And I said, "The title." And she was kind of stunned by the simplicity of my answer. And she says, "The title? Why would you say that?" I said, "Well, when I first came to Carolina and I looked at the excellence around us, but realizing that our school had not achieved the same level of excellence that so many of the schools and departments were at, I realized very quickly how difficult it was to move an organization, a faculty who already had the belief that they were great, but only good. It would have been much easier for us if we had had an organization that thought of itself as good and aspired to be great."
Right.
And so what we first had to do is to really let everyone understand what we could be and how each and every faculty, staff member, and student could contribute to this evolution towards excellence. We didn't use the word great, but we rather chose to use the word this pursuit of excellence, because the pursuit of excellence, it never ends. And it's a perpetual commitment on the part of any organization. And so there are many good to great stories, but some of the good to great stories end at greatness, and then you see a potential opportunity for decline.
In fact, there's that wonderful statement in Collins' book that the moment you think you are great, that very moment is the moment you begin your slide into mediocrity.
Well, so Collins wrote another book several years after his Good to Great book, and it was How the Mighty Fall. And he went back and reanalyzed the data, because some of his good to great stories did experience decline, and then was looking at the characteristics of that decline. So our commitment was to excellence, and then getting a leadership team put together that shared the vision of this pursuit of excellence. And that was probably the most difficult thing.
Now, how important was it, by the way, to have the leadership team in place?
It was critical. And when I first arrived at Carolina, I would say that we had great people, but not everyone was prepared, to really roll up their sleeves and do the heavy lifting to bring us to that good to great place. And so it was apparent that we would have to make changes in critical leadership positions, particularly at the chair level, later at the associate dean level, and ultimately throughout the entire organization, including at the staff level. So during the first 3 years, there was much change, and much of that change occurred as a result of changes in expectation. And it was not a judgment as to whether or not people, were committed or not, or cared or not. It was really, where are they in their life cycle personally in relationship to where we are as an organization in terms of its life cycle. You need certain people with a certain amount of energy and a shared vision to do, as key leadership positions at key points within the evolution of that organization. We needed people who were willing to reach, people who were willing to take risks with me, calculated risks, but nonetheless risks, and who were willing to get out of the boundaries of a comfortable school and extend themselves across this campus in a collaborative way and across the state in a way that would demonstrate to everyone, our colleagues, but more importantly, the people who we serve, that this school could do more for this university, this school could do more for this state.
Yeah.
If we aspire to be the best public university in the country, then this university needs for every school to do its fair share.
And it sounds like in sort of reshuffling your leadership team, in some cases, was it a matter of just finding a better assignment for somebody, and or in other cases moving people out altogether? But getting those assignments right was I take it, really critical for your success.
I think there was a lot of self-selection. Once the vision was clearly articulated and the ambition was understood, individuals looked within themselves and asked, well, maybe this isn't for me to do.
Right.
And that created opportunity.
Right.
And in many respects, I would say that the transition in leadership was very smooth and very welcoming by all parties. So it wasn't like someone was being pushed out. It was just that for this moment in time, it wasn't the right fit for them, and they recognized that, and then they moved off.
But I would also argue that that was. I think that describes a particularly deft leadership style on your part to get people to that point, and so you made this. It sounds like you weren't without resistance, but this transition mostly went, I would say, smoothly. And I can tell you from my perspective in South Building at the time, I wasn't getting missiles lodged from across the street from the pharmacy school. So whatever was going on over there was peaceful enough that it never rose to the level of my tension.
So the leadership team was one part of the change.
Yeah.
But also garnering faculty support was the other, and that's a bit harder.
That's really key.
Because in the end, you can develop the strongest of strategic plans. But as I said to our faculty, after our faculty voted unanimously to support our strategic plan, I then announced to the faculty, congratulations, you have a strategic plan. And I want to remind you that I'm not doing this. I am here to help provide the resources and the infrastructure for you to do this strategic plan, for you to execute this strategic plan. And our covenant between each other is that I am here to provide the resources, to get the resources that you need to be successful. You are here to primarily utilize those resources in the most optimum way to change the picture, to change the face of this school in the most impactful of ways. And we must hold each other accountable to that covenant.
No, that's a great point, and that leads me to my next question automatically. I just interject the idea that a person in a leadership position like this is, as you know, I'm a musician. You're a conductor, and I constantly say, to people, to ourselves, we don't make a sound. The orchestra makes them. They make all the noise. They make the music. Our job is simply to sort of make sure that they all come in at the right place, but we don't make a single sound.
Right.
They make it all. They make the music. So now here's the key question. But you do have a key role in this, and that is because it's your job to make sure that they do come in. Now you have the strategic plan in place. You have all these goals laid out. How do you make assured that this really gets done?
Yeah. Well, the way that we approached it, we agreed as a faculty that the strategic plan was more than just aspirational.
Yeah.
That we had a very clear vision and mission statement, and we had very clear strategic initiatives and strategic objectives to accomplish those strategic initiatives. And so we would be about then the business of doing it. So following the development of the strategic plan, We then had a number of meetings in terms of how are we planning on executing the plan, because it's the execution
right.
of the strategic plan that makes it all happen. And so we began to identify who was going to be responsible for various elements within that plan, what were the metrics, what were the outcomes, and every year I go before the faculty, usually our January faculty meeting, and I bring a report card to the faculty. And I show a slide of all of our strategic initiatives and objectives, and I insert under each of those what progress we made during the past year in terms of accomplishing those. I then beg the question, are these strategic initiatives, are these strategic objectives still strategic?
Yeah, right.
Are they still worth pursuing? If they aren't, let's take them off of our plan.
Yeah.
We are living in a ever-changing world.
Right.
The dynamics of this state are changing every day, aren't
Right.
they? And all of those things have direct impact on the environment that we work and live in. And so for us to think that we had it all figured out the day we consummated that strategic plan would be folly. We know that in order for this to be truly strategic, we must be open-minded towards change. Changes that are going to be occurring within our own environment, that we have a role to play in that change. Every time we hire a new person,
Right.
there's an opportunity for new change, constructive change. And we're also affected by the outside world, whether we like it or not.
Right.
Funding, whether it be at NIH or within the state, whether it be at the endowment level, all of these factors have to be considered. So every year we re-ask the question, what new strategic initiatives or objectives should we pursue?
And conversely, does anything need to drop off this list?
Anything needs to drop off. And what I constantly remind our faculty is that this is our compass.
Yeah.
And so when you agree on this strategic plan, you are in essence empowering me as the CEO of this organization and the leadership of this school, our executive committee, to go out there and to position this school for us to successfully accomplish these objectives.
Yeah.
And so I don't need to feel the obligation to come back to the faculty every time a new opportunity arises. I ask the question, is it somewhere embedded into this plan? And then my job is then to pursue it, to investigate it, identify whether or not it's of value or not, advocate it at various levels within the organization, and then find the resources to make it happen.
How often, this brings back a Michael Porter thought, how often do you say no to an idea that it's either not doable or it's not within the framework of our capabilities? And how important is it to say no?
I'd say 80% of the time.
Really?
Yes. There are so many good ideas. But I think the thing about good ideas is that they're not always at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think part of the strategic side of a strategy within a school like ours, we're not a big school. You know, we don't have infinite resources. We cannot be all things to all people at all times. We have to preferentially target our priorities and invest heavily in those so that we can win at them.
Yeah.
Because what we have accepted is this notion of excellence. And there is a certain balance that you have to weigh in terms of distribution of assets or resources across many project areas that might be of value to some versus those that are most impactful for this point in time. And so that's how we go from having 100 great ideas to 20 great ideas. And we know that and it's not to say that those other 80 great ideas aren't very admirable and worthy of pursuit. They may be in our next plan because we may progress accordingly. We could not do everything at once. We had to decide what we wanted to do first, second, third, fourth, and then perhaps put off to the next strategic
Now, several
plan.
times you've alluded to resources, and we all know that you can't affect great change, you certainly can't make great progress without resources. What were the essential resources, and how important, as a sort of corollary to this question, how important was private fundraising as a component of building the resource base you needed to do what you wanted to do?
Yeah. I feel that our organization was somewhat advantaged as it relates to resource allocation. We're a single school, a single department school. And what that enables us to do at the dean's office level is to use all of the resources that are available, and that includes enrollment resources, tuition resources, endowment resources, salary recovery resources, F&A resources. All of these resources can be used strategically to accomplish the strategic goal. And so obviously fundraising was huge. And probably more importantly, fundraising gave us a different dimension. Obviously, you were very much involved in a major gift that was bestowed upon this school. And my predecessor, Dean Bill Campbell, worked very hard in cultivating the whole area of advancement, and and
it's great that we give Bill Campbell does really deserve credit for the major gift from Fred Eshelman.
And so I had that as a resource when I arrived, and the nice thing about it for me is that it was crafted in such a way that I felt I could have done that. I could have been the creator of the crafting of that, and so it was very much in alignment with the way that I would have saw the utilization of those resources. And so that was very powerful from a couple of standpoints. It was a validation to the entire campus and perhaps to the state, to the academy, that this school was relevant. That's important. This school needed relevance. And so as we then started to think about an ambitious agenda that was going to need to be resourced, we had one individual, someone who gave a significant portion of his own private wealth to this school in suggesting that we were relevant. We can do this. And so as we then were trying to map out some of our other resource needs, if we were going to grow, and we did, we added over 50 faculty within a relatively short period of time. We nearly doubled our graduate student population. We increased our professional student population by 25%. And you can't do these things without resources. And so we grew our enrollment resources and our tuition resources. But we strategically developed an integrated business model that blended the academic mission, the teaching academic mission, to the research academic mission. That was an important thing for our faculty to understand. Because prior to that, we sort of were in a siloed mentality. We had the education agenda, we had the research agenda. The education agenda is fed by tuition and enrollment. The research agenda is being fed by indirects and salary recovery dollars. And both groups within their own silos would prefer to just keep their own resource.
Right.
And I shared at an early faculty meeting that if we do that, we will never grow, because there's not the consistency of vitality in both of those sources of resource for us to sustain growth. And so what I convinced our faculty was that we have to use tuition and enrollment resources across the mission of the school. We have to invest in science with those resources, because if we don't, we will not be able to recruit outstanding scientists. And then once we have these outstanding scientists who have the potential of creating wealth through grants and contracts and other types of activity, including intellectual property, company creation, and royalty flow, then these assets then can flow back into the education mission. This develops an integrated, webbed, strategic plan, but it also creates an integrated business model that is in keeping with the spirit of Carolina in many respects. And that is that we have a broad mission. We need to do many things. For us to be a great school, a great university, we must do many things to the point of excellence. And we cannot do this if we are going to exist in a siloed
So you
fashion.
lowered the walls, or actually eliminated the silos. And the other thing that I recall is that we've talked mostly about the tremendous run-up in research. And there were two things that you inherited from your predecessor and from us. One was the Eshelman gift, which was but you also inherited this unconsummated agreement with Elizabeth City State to basically to extend our educational program to a distant campus. That was an agreement that was made before you got, but then you had the job of implementing what was really potentially a huge problem.
Yes.
But it occurs to me that in dealing with this problem, it led you to what I think is one of the great achievements of your time, of your administration, which was this educational renaissance, I think you call it. And so you had a major impact on not only in the research side, but on the teaching and educational side. Would you talk a bit about that? Because I think that's involved in this diminution of the silos, because both sides actually benefited from this set of changes.
Yes. We did have the opportunity to create a branch campus at Elizabeth City State University, and when we were envisioning how to do this, we decided to fully embrace technology. So it's been a wonderful story, and
you got some resources from the state to do that.
We did have,
obviously, so resources played a role here.
And so the first phase was simply to get it to work. But when I tell people that we started with technology, but it led to pedagogy,
right.
I think that's the fascination to the story. And so if we were going to use video teleconferencing technologies to do it, we needed to be state-of-the-art. We needed to do it in a way that when a faculty member was going to engage our students, they could do it without fear of the technology. And in fact, what we asked the designers, education designers, and the technology experts to do is to create this classroom environment that would enable the pedagogy to utilize the technology and not to have the technology drive the pedagogy.
Right.
And so our faculty walks in, so we have these state-of-the-art rooms. And so after we completed the technology build-up and we turned on the lights, we turned on the cameras, and we began our class, I decided to take a trip up to Elizabeth City and to sit in the back of the classroom and to listen to one of our faculty lecture at our students. Now, we had begun to think about teaching a little bit differently, and we want more interactivity within our classroom setting. And so I'm sitting in the back of the room, and I'm listening to this faculty member, and he is, and I have this notion of Bloom's taxonomy on my mind.
Right.
And for those who aren't familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, it is in essence a pyramid of how one learns. And so at the foundation, the base of Bloom's taxonomy is content, information, and knowledge. It moves up to compounding and synthesis. But the holy grail of teaching, particularly for us at Carolina, is to impart the wisdom to our students that will lead to critical thinking and problem solving.
Right.
That's what we really want all of our students to leave with. And so I have this on my mind, and I'm thinking, what percentage of this class falls below the median of Bloom's taxonomy? And much to my dismay, a large percentage of it did. I came up with a number of 90%. And I was disappointed because we spent a tremendous amount of resources in these classrooms to build these classrooms in a way that would enable the highest level of pedagogical exchange between our faculty and our students. And what a resource to capitalize on. The two most important resources that we have within a university: outstanding students and an outstanding faculty. And if, for the most part, we are only capturing the face time between these two entities at the bottom of that pyramid, what a waste for us. And so it was this exercise that really led to the creation of the Educational Renaissance. And the Educational Renaissance is an aspirational goal of our school, and it's to flip the percentage from 90% foundational knowledge in terms of the interchange between our faculty and our students to 90% critical thinking and problem solving, and to offload much of this content information exchange that normally occurs in the classroom through lecture format, usually through the use of PowerPoint slides, to now offload that to asynchronous tools. And so we have developed a unique partnership with our own information technology services, and we have at our disposal science writers and programmers and animators who are working with our faculty to create these asynchronous tools that will enable us to, in a highly effective way, offload content information and knowledge exchange to students in a much more easily understood, learn at your own pace, and now bring them back into the classroom. And what better opportunity at a research-intensive university is for our faculty, who are known as being creators of new knowledge, who are known for writing the seminal works in the field, for writing the textbooks, to doing the cutting-edge work in practice. What better opportunity now to give them the time to engage with our students in the area of maximizing their potential for critical thinking and problem solving. And so now we are moving gradually and towards a problem-based learning curriculum where we now actively engage our students in all aspects of learning.
And I take it this really must have been a moment of excitement for your faculty as well. It must have just really energized them.
Well, it did. One of the concerns that some of our faculty expressed as we were growing our research enterprise, and we were growing at a very rapid, aggressive pace. So over my first 7 years here as dean, our federal funding grew almost 1,400%. Which I believe is unprecedented for any school in the history of this campus, and probably for any school within our academy. And so as we were growing, recruiting just world-class faculty in the various areas of science relevant to our disciplines, some of our faculty who were much more oriented to our teaching and service mission began to feel like, gee, I wonder if there's still a place for me here. And so as the educational renaissance began to be expressed and articulated, it became increasingly more apparent to those faculty that, yes, there is a place for you here. That in order for us to be a world-class school of pharmacy, we must be great at our teaching mission too. And we must be able to advance the pedagogy of learning. And so as we were beginning to embark on this educational renaissance, the real question was, will we know outstanding innovation in teaching if we saw it?
Yeah.
And if we see it, how will we reward it? How will we value it? In our academic culture, what is the ultimate reward? Well, for most of our faculty, many of our viewers may be surprised, it's not money. It's academic progression.
Right.
It's being promoted from an assistant professor to an associate professor, from an associate professor to a full professor, from a full professor to a distinguished professor.
Right.
And it's this recognition by your peers that you are contributing in a very meaningful way, not only for your own benefit, but for the benefit of your academy and for the benefit of society. That's what really drives most of our faculty. And so what they had seen historically was an appointment, promotion, tenure, reappointment process that was very staid in understanding what we valued. We valued money, federal funding, graduate student training. We valued patents, and we valued things that were tangible. You could see them, you could touch them. Everybody's expected to be a great teacher. And so, but what we were looking for was more than just a great teacher. We were looking for faculty who wanted to advance teaching within our profession. We wanted faculty to be innovative, to be creative, to take risks, no different than our wet lab bench scientists, and to do it in a way that was scholarly. And so to support that side of our mission, it was absolutely critical that we revisited our appointment, promotion, tenure, and
so you did really, I think this is really significant change that can be emulated all across the university. I just really commend you for this.
So in our appointment document now, we have 3 areas of scholarship that a faculty member can enter into our academy with. The scholarship of discovery, which is rather traditional and classical, the scholarship of education, and the scholarship of application, and making it clear that the scholarship of education is not simply being a good teacher.
Right. It's fabulous. I just think, and I think this is a model that can be adapted all across the university. I want a couple of, before we run out of time, 2 things that I don't want to fail to discuss. One is you also have a really strong commitment to diversity. My sense is this is not an easy thing to do in the hard science fields, but I think you've got some success. So would you talk about that as well?
Oh, this has been an area that we've been working hard at, particularly over the last 2 years, and I would say that it's not easy. One, our profession historically has not attracted a lot of individuals across our cultures. And so what you really have to consider is the pipeline of talent. Because our university, our school, has such high expectations for everyone, we need to attract the best and the brightest. But we also must have the aspiration on behalf of the state for our university and for our school to look and to resemble the citizenry of this state. I believe this is a moral imperative for us. And as we engage our students to be pioneers, what better opportunity to articulate a pioneer vision into the academy. And so we have created I believe it's the first of its kind on this campus for schools, and as far as I am aware, the first within our academy, an Office of Recruitment and Diversity. This particular office has been showing tremendous leadership within our school and across this campus. And the programs that are being developed are just wonderful. They're starting in the high schools and also in the feeder schools that are likely to bring students with diverse backgrounds and cultures into the School of Pharmacy. Just last week, we had 2 wonderful successes. We recruited a minority faculty member, an African-American faculty member, out of the University of Texas, and our school participated in the Diversity Scholarship Program, and we have an outstanding scientist from Vanderbilt University who is going to be postdocing here with the intent to migrate towards a faculty position. None of that would have been possible if this office had not been created. And of course, none of it would have been possible if this university itself did not embrace the whole concept of diversity. So from a school standpoint, it's always easier, I think, to be successful in these activities when there's integration between the school and the priorities of the university. One of the things that we did with strategic planning is that we aligned our strategic plan with the academic plan of this university 7 years ago. And we also did it in consideration to the strategic plan of the UNC system. So it all flows in a very logical way, and we're in essence synced through our planning process, as long as it's a living, breathing, strategic process.
Right. Finally, the most recent thing I watch you doing and observe is this movement to becoming truly global, and your exploration of a relationship with the National University of Singapore. Would you describe that, and why is this important?
Yeah. Well, it would be easy for us to say to ourselves, we have much work to do here in North Carolina. It would also be easy for us to say that we have much work to do here in the United States. But everybody agrees that we are at a different time and a different place. And globalization is here, whether one likes it or doesn't. It's a reality. We have faculty and students from around the globe. And I guess my moment really came about as a result of asking a simple question to my Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Education. I asked him to take a snapshot of our faculty and our graduate students, both particularly those who are actively engaged in the most competitive, the most cutting-edge areas of our disciplines. And he did. And so I asked him, what percentage of our graduate students and what percentage of our faculty emanate from Asia? And so I was surprised with the results. At that time, about 40% of our graduate students had their roots from Asia, and about 30% of our basic science faculty had their origins from Asia. And I then asked him to do another exercise. What percentage of our federal funding do those 30% hold? And I was surprised again that the percent was quite high, approximating 70%. I then asked him, and I've asked this question to hundreds of people since I've asked it to him for validation. I asked him, could we as a school, given what is happening with immigration law, given what is happening in Asia itself as it relates to building of their own economies, investing significantly in higher education and economic business clusters around areas of science, could we replace that talent with domestic talent and still think of ourselves as a world-class school of pharmacy? And the answer to that was no. And that was a very sobering message. Now, I am, as a dean, absolutely committed with making sure that every one of our students, citizens of this state, reach their full potential. But we are in a battle for brains, and we are competing not in North Carolina for that battle, not in the United States for that battle. We are competing globally for the best and the brightest. And so the question was, if an inverse brain drain occurs, which many are predicting over the next 25 years, what will the state of public universities be? How will we compete against the elite privates and even against the global universities? How do we position ourselves for continued greatness in that kind of a world without compromising our mission to the citizens of this state? And so I will tell you that that thought was reinforced. When I have traveled throughout Asia, and I was standing in downtown Seoul, Korea, one day, and I was just looking at the energy of this incredible city, and realizing that within a 25-mile radius of downtown Seoul, there were 25 million people, highly educated, highly wired, and they want what you have: a wonderful life, educated children, an opportunity to reach your full potential, and to do it in Korea. And so I realized then that we have a challenge. We not only have a challenge to be global, to identify strategic partners globally, partner as equals around themes of common interest and mutual benefit, and to do it so that it will return value to both entities, the state of North Carolina as well as the strategic global partner. We decided to seek a place that would fit all of those expectations, and also be a good strategic partner in the sense that it could align very nicely with the priorities of this university. That brought me to Singapore and the National University of Singapore. And so we have, over the last 3 years, been actively engaged in a dialogue with the National University of Singapore, with their Ministry of Education and their Ministry of Health. And it is our hope and goal by all parties that we will develop the type of meaningful collaboration that will bring our students, our faculty to Singapore, bring their students and faculty to Chapel Hill, and that we create a wonderful intellectual, academic exchange that could lead to who knows what,
right.
Perhaps significant economic return for our state. So we believe that this is an important area to move into, to extend our mission, more or less. This is something that has been articulated not only by our school, but this is embraced by this university, by the UNC system, and it needs to be understood well and carefully by our citizenry and by our legislatures, because I think failure to comprehend the ramifications of not having these strategic partnerships now, when the opportunity is to contribute in a collaborative way, I think will hurt us in the future if these aren't in place.
I completely agree, and I salute you for what you've accomplished in that regard and are doing. And in fact, I think this is a great example of the power of an excellent program reaching out and becoming global to bring knowledge creation and ultimately wealth back to the people and state of North Carolina. So I think it's a very important thing that this university is doing, and specifically the School of Pharmacy is doing. Bob, thanks so much for sharing all of this with us today. I think your story is a great insight of an example of what Jim Collins talks about in Good to Great. And the Eshelman School of Pharmacy, which was a good school, a very good school when you came, is truly on the path of striving for and achieving, but never reaching the total goal, because that's a contradiction in terms. That's what we want all of our schools to do. But thanks for sharing this story, this ongoing story of becoming truly excellent. I just salute you and your colleagues in the School of Pharmacy. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.